Welcome to the Breaking 90 podcast, where we talk about all things sustainable fat loss. We take people on 90-day journeys to creating fat loss forever. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoy the episode.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Breaking 90 podcast. I'm your host, Alex Harriman, here with my co-host, Kelly Sarlo, and we are two of the coaches of Breaking 90 Fitness. I hope you enjoyed today's episode.
Hi, Alex.
Hi, how are
How
you?
are you? You first.
Me first. I'm good. Doing great. It's what?
Oh, I thought you were just going to end it there. I want to know more.
Yeah, no, we're coming to the end of the nice short summer weather that we get here in Canada, and it's that like bittersweet feeling.
Okay. You okay?
I love this time of year where you can just go outside without bundling up. Don't get me wrong, I like winter too, but it's it's good. Just trying to like cherish every last minute. So we planned a little road trip actually for because it's Emerson's birthday coming up.
Mhm.
And if you're listening to this, we'll already be back from the road trip. But he wanted an experience rather than presents this year. And so we talked a lot about like what different options are, and we looked at just like places we could drive relatively close to Ontario, and we picked Cleveland, Ohio, because we've never been there. And
Wow.
so I'm really excited because none of the three of us have been there. Obviously, Emerson hasn't. But we're gonna spend 3 or 4 days there, just like doing touristy stuff, checking out different parks and playgrounds and things like that. And it's I'm looking forward to it. It's a good way to wrap up the summer and enjoy this last week before it's back to the grind.
That's really cool. I don't think it ever would have crossed my mind to do a road trip to check out parks and playgrounds.
Well, those are like the big things he really likes, right?
Yeah, of
And
course.
then we'll do other stuff too, but like without getting crazy expensive. Like we're not gonna do a lot of like really expensive things. And so we got an Airbnb. We're gonna go grocery shopping. And he goes crazy for playgrounds. So just like getting to see other playgrounds is like a really fun way to supplement a trip.
Love it. That is far less expensive than the coming years.
Yeah. For
Good for
sure.
you guys.
All right. You ready for this?
I think so.
You think so?
I hope so.
What I want to talk about is bouncing back from big meals, festivities, get-togethers, long weekends, like the bounce back ability, as we often refer to it with our clients, and what that looks like.
Cool. I love
Okay.
this topic. Yep.
So I know that for a lot of people, they feel like that is the catalyst to their downfall. They feel like that one big meal, that one big event, that one big night is what threw them off track. And I want to start by saying, if you're listening to this, if you get nothing else from this recording, it's not that big of a deal.
No.
And this is a huge part of what we work on with the busy women, the clients that come and work with us, is that how far off track you fall in that one event or that one period of time rarely ever determines your success. Anything you want to add there?
Nope. I'm going to draw some analogies later, but keep going.
So now, if that's not what determines your success, what is? What determines our success are two things. How quickly we can get back on track is the big one. And the other one's how often are these things happening? So if we look at those two and we say, okay, I'm not going to worry about falling off track because that happens. That happens to everybody. It's going to happen. I'm going to forgive myself for that. We can, if you listen to our other episodes, like listen to our one about minimizing the damage, we can talk about strategies around not repeating this cycle. We can make them a little bit more in line with our goals. But even if that happens, and it will because it happens to all of us, how can I bounce back as quickly as possible? And how often is it happening? If this is the type of thing that's happening all the time and it's like I can bounce back really quick, but it's happening every single weekend, well, yeah, we're not going to make progress because we can't have these events happening so frequently that they make up more than 20% of kind of our day-to-day routines, right? But if it's like a once in a lifetime or a once in a year or a once in a blue moon type of situation, like relax. It's not that big of a deal. Um, it's just when they start compiling. If you're like, well, Christmas only happens once a year, Thanksgiving only happens once a year, Easter only happens once a year,
Yeah.
summer barbecues only happen the 8 weeks in the summer. Like it's like you can't start justifying all of these things because they're once in a year opportunities because those start compiling really quickly.
Yep.
Cool.
I love that because you're drawing attention to the fact that, like, not one single statement that you just made is wrong. All of that is correct. And when you look at the big picture, those facts become a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And if you're like if I often talk about the Christmas season because it's a tough one for a lot of people because kids are out of school for the winter break. You regardless of what you and your family celebrate, there's usually a lot of big meals and events in there. During that kids are out of school. If that's like a really important time of year to you, you can still do it well. You can still do it really big. You can still have that one day that gets chaotic or that one meal that gets chaotic. That's not going to hurt you. But it's just that so many of us, right off the days leading up to that, right off the days after that, justify that, oh, it's only a couple more days till New Year's. So there's no point getting back on track now. Wait till January 1st. Like that's where the problem lies, guys. It's never ever just that one meal or that one event that's hurting us. If we look at a 365-day year, we want you on track 80% of the time. So I mean, we run quick math on that. That's just under 300. So like you have like 65 days where you can not be a complete asshole with your diet, but you can have some wiggle room. You can enjoy yourself. You can go off track a little bit. And if you do that and you minimize the damage, as we say, which just means make a few choices better than you would have in the past, you're going to make consistent progress. But as soon as you start saying, I'll get back on track Monday, then that one event turns into 2 or 3 days. Oh, it's Christmas. I'll get back on track January 1st. Now, Christmas, instead of being a 1 day thing, has turned into a 6 or 7 day thing for you. Those 60 days start disappearing very quickly when we do this.
Love that. Okay. Anywhere else you want to go with that before I jump in?
No, go ahead.
One of the first things that I would ask myself or anyone else is what pulled you off track? Because sometimes it's not necessarily an occasion, it's a festivity that you've gone to, right? Like a barbecue season that we talked about. What pulled you off track? Now, some people are going to say the chips. Some people are going to say the dip, right? That's not what I mean. When I say what pulled you off track, I'm looking more for have you deprived yourself tremendously leading up to this? Because if we're looking not at the festivity itself, but the actual the ways that you're trying to live your day-to-day life, if that is a constant level of deprivation that you're in, then it isn't actually the festivity that pulled you off track, it's the unsustainability of what you're trying to do, right? And then they do become harder to bounce back because I've just gifted this thing to myself that I've been withholding. It feels almost impossible to think about going back to life without it for a long period of time, and we fall into this all or nothing mindset. So that question of what actually did the trick to pull you off track is a really deep question to get into.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good point. We see this a lot with even just like on a minor scale, we see this a lot with cravings, with people that are like, I'm so hungry right before dinner, and I always end up eating the crackers, the cheese, the meat, and just like the snacking that adds up really quickly with calories before dinner. And it's like, okay, that might be true, but what if we just backtrack and look at your lunch? Like, what'd you
Yep.
have for lunch? Well, I just had a super small salad. Well, there's the problem. Like, we're not a rabbit, right? You need some food in your life. So have a bigger lunch. Add some of those like 600 calories worth of cheese, crackers, and meat that you ate right before dinner. Let's take a portion of that, tack it onto our lunch so it's a nice, big, healthy, hearty lunch, and I'm held over a little bit longer.
Yep. Love that. Anywhere else you want to go?
As you're talking, like it made me think too. So say you are at that event that you weren't planning on going off track, but those chips got you, or that thing got you. If we look at that bounce back ability that I talked about earlier, we can look at this big scale and small scale. There's the big scale that like, I'll wait till Monday, I'll wait till January 1st, I'll wait until that. Like that, there's that version. But there's also like at that event, okay, the chips got you, they caught you off guard, you ate them. Why are we allowing that to then determine the choices we make after that? Because this is not how our bodies work, guys. And I know you've all been there. You're like, this night's a write-off, I'll start fresh tomorrow. There's nothing saying you binging on those chips and still prioritizing your fruits, vegetables, protein in the next meal, and like having that healthy dinner, and still making the other choices that you had chosen to make. There's nothing saying you can't do that. And in fact, it's still very much so in line with your goals. You can only do so much damage with that one bowl of chips.
Yeah.
And if you allow it to compound and become the catalyst of the rest of the night, that's where the issue lies. It's very rare that it's the problem of when we fell off track. It's how long it took us to get back on track.
Yeah. I like that. And I mean, there's different ways that we can approach, I guess, the moment that we know that we're potentially being pulled off track is to be able to portion it, right? Especially when we're approaching a table that has open ability to serve ourselves. We can portion it into a cup, we can portion it into a bowl, a plate, etc., and decide that once it's over, yep, maybe it took us off track to a certain degree, whether it was your dessert or what have you. That felt great and I'm getting back on track right now, right? So it doesn't have to be where the meal, the day, the week takes us off track. It can be literally just one little thing that takes us over, and that was quite enjoyable. Just heading right back to our purpose over pleasure, right? This is a moment of pleasure. I'm heading right back to purpose as a mindset approach to it. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's the guiding principle that sticks out to me a lot here too, is the purpose over pleasure. How are we making these decisions? Is this decision a purpose-based decision, or is this a pleasure-based decision? Um, that one alone can save you in a lot of these situations.
Yeah. I want to bring up another intuitive question that most people ask. And I say this constantly in coaching. We as human beings ask brilliant, intuitive questions, and then we don't bother to answer them. So, for example, a lot of people fall off track and they're like, oh, well, what's the point? Great question. I wish you would answer that, right? Because the question itself is going to help you navigate what you actually want to do and what matters to you. If you say, well, what's the point? We can go back to your why. Why are you actually wanting to achieve these goals in the first place? Then that's the point we jump back on track, right? If you say, well, what's the point? We can approach that question from the perspective of, well, because this bowl of chips is not going to wreck my entire progress, I can get back on track and keep going, right? So we can approach one question from a lot of different angles to understand. Maybe your point is, I still want to be healthy for my kids and for my life. The point is, I want to enjoy something that tastes a little bit outside of what I'm used to and hop back on track. So yet again, we can help ourselves by answering the one question we bothered to ask.
Yeah, I love it. I love it because anybody that is in that situation, if they took the time to evaluate, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, I'm being dumb right now."
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we all know it because if it was our idiot friend who's like, oh, well, what's the point? We'd have great advice for them. Right. And yet when it's ourselves, it becomes an excuse.
Well, like imagine this scenario that we've all done for sure, and if you're listening to this, I know you've done it, where you fall off track with your plan and you say, "Screw it, I'm gonna this day's a write-off. I'll start fresh tomorrow." Then you sat back and you objectively said, "Do I believe that having one bowl of chips is justifies me eating like an asshole the rest of the night? Or do I think it would be better for me to have the one bowl of chips and then still eat well the rest of the night? Every single one of us knows the answer to that, but every single one of us has made the wrong choice there before.
Yeah. Yeah. There's healthy, subtle ways that we can just slightly self-correct or course correct what we're doing. And I think if people give themselves long enough to just pause, to think about the situation that they're in, rather than just continue to reach for the thing that they feel has dead-ended their journey, then we can really truly help ourselves.
So, two things I want to tie back together that we've talked about on this podcast. The one that you mentioned is like depriving ourselves is not the answer because it often leads to these binges, blowouts, and cravings. The second one is that bounce back ability. So, we've fallen off track. We've had a rough weekend, event, festivity, whatever, and now we know we want to bounce back as quick as possible. What that doesn't mean is creating the vicious cycle where we punish and restrict ourselves. And I know a lot of you aren't going to see it as a punishment, so you're not you're going to be like, "Oh, I don't punish myself." I don't necessarily mean that you have to view it at that point, but that's what it is. It's where we feel like we made choices that aren't in line with our goals. So then we swing the pendulum all the way the opposite way and we say, I need to now suffer Monday and Tuesday to justify my actions.
Yeah.
This is creating a vicious cycle that will again lead to another binge or blowout. It's not fueling you properly. It's not allowing your body to bounce back effectively. It's not allowing you to recover effectively. It's not doing you justice. So if you've had a binge or blowout, the best thing you can do is get right back to your plan. Will this mean more calories in the short run? Yes. If my goal is to have 2,000 calories a day, and on that weekend I have 5,000 and 5,000, so now I'm at 10,000 calories. A lot of people will then say, well, I'm not going to eat anything on Monday, which evens that out. So now I'm only 400 calories surplus or 4,000 calories surplus, but you should go back to your 2,000. And I know it feels counterintuitive, um, but it is the best way for your body to recover and adapt. You might not be as hungry because you've actually got a lot of extra calories in you still. It's okay if you're not as hungry to eat slightly less, like 10% less, but restricting and like starving yourself the next day or 2 days or 3 days is never ever the answer you're looking for. And it's really really counterproductive if you are exercising, because your body needs that fuel to properly recover and repair and perform.
Yeah. If it's okay, I want to just kind of illustrate this in a much different way because I think people understand things when we paint visual kind of pictures for them, and they understand it when we're talking about other people too. If we compare what you just talked about, how we are treating our bodies with food by overloading and then completely withholding, if we compare it to a relationship with someone, so another human being, and we think about the fact that you start yelling at me, okay? We're in an argument and you are just coming at me and in my face. And then all of a sudden for the next day and a half, you don't talk to me, okay? And we start into this cycle of this kind of communication. It creates a ton of insecurity, right? So within me, I don't know if you're going to be in my face or not talking to me at all. And I don't know what to do around you. This becomes our relationship with food, right? Where it's like, okay, it feels threatening when it's in my presence because what if I'm out of control and there's too much? And then I'm going to withhold it. I'm going to turn a blind eye to it. Your body now has an insecurity around food. So does your brain, where is it too much or not enough? Do I deserve it? Do I not? Right. And what we want to be creating is trustworthiness within ourselves, reliability within ourselves, to not use it as a punishment in either form. Does that make sense?
Love it.
Okay, awesome.
My brain right away went to like the other concept here, like to me, or the parallel to me would be like overfilling the fuel tank on your car so that it's spilling out onto the ground because there's no more room for it. That's you binge eating.
Yeah.
And then using all of that fuel and then not putting any fuel in the tank because you're like, well, I put way too much in the other day, so now I'm not going to put enough in. Well, your car's out of gas.
Guess what? You ain't running.
Now you're not going anywhere.
Exactly that. I love it.
No, that's great. That's a cool parallel. Um, so to wrap it all up, I mean, I think that you guys get where we're coming from. I think you get the gist of what we're saying. Like, one, forgive yourself. We're all human. We're all going to fall off track. Two, look at how quickly I can bounce back. What is my bounce back ability here? What do I need to do to get back on track? Not to restrict, not to do anything differently, just to get back to where I wanted to be. What needs to happen? How fast can I do that? Three, how frequently are these events happening? Is that the bigger problem here? Where it's not so much that I fell off track, it's how often I'm allowing myself to fall off track, and that's a whole nother conversation. And then having these conversations with yourself, these deeper conversations with yourself, and really like looking intrinsically and answering your own questions of why we're allowing this to happen. I think that those to me are the big takeaways here. But yeah, anything that we didn't cover though that you really wanted to touch on before we wrap this one up?
Not not specific to what they could do. I think just maybe being open to having that honest conversation with yourself and potentially a coach to say, "Okay, you know what? This is frequent. This is a pattern of mine, and it is something that's causing me distress," or we can relabel it and say self-loathing, or what have you, right? Stress. If you're open to having that conversation about accountability with someone so that they can hold you accountable in a much kinder and more consistent way until you build that discipline, that might be the best gift you give yourself.
Love that. Love that. And that's at the end of the day why people hire us.
Yeah.
It's to have somebody in your corner to bounce these conversations off of, to hold you accountable to the things that you probably already know you should be doing. This is the reason that people hire us,
Yeah.
to make it a simplified plan that you can actually stick to for life.
Perfect.
Okay.
You have a tip?
Yeah. That was deep. So I'll go lighter on this one.
Okay.
My tip is still on the same topic, still on the festivities and big events, things like that. But I'm gonna just kick it back to the pre-planning version of this. So you've probably, if you've worked with us, you've for sure heard me say this. I've probably shared it at some point on a podcast. What we do headed into these events, like Kelly touched on, can have a great impact on how we behave at these events. So a really easy way to do this is to binge eat your healthy version, your healthy snacks right before we get into them. Make sure we're getting our water, we're getting our protein, we're getting our fruits and vegetables with the uncertainty of what could happen at this event. So if that means in the car, you've got like a bowl of raw veggies and your water bottle and like some protein snack or a protein shake, like do that. Do that right then as close as possible to the event so that we're a little bit more full. We're making sure we're hitting those nutrients, and we're less likely to just snack out of boredom and make choices that aren't in line with our goals.
Perfect.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for being here. As always, we appreciate it. Just so you know, right now we are taking people into our program. We're still we still have openings in our program. So if this resonated with you, and if you're sitting there and you're like, you know what, maybe I do need the accountability, I really, really strongly encourage you to reach out, have that conversation with us. This is what we do every day. We walk busy women through how to implement this into their lives, make these sustainable habits stick, so that you don't ride that roller coaster of progress and binge and destruction. We tie it together, make it manageable for you and sustainable for life. So if that sounds interesting, just put your hand up, have the conversation, and at least see where it might take you.
Lovely.
Have a great day, guys.